Hi, my name is Matt Scholl, and here I'll be showing the AV and technical skills that I've learned through the years. There's a lot to cover, so we're going to jump right in. With enough time, I'm able to walk into a room and tune a sound system to create a good, distraction-free environment for worship, and I can also teach individuals and groups to do the same. A lot of my talent is in audio-related areas. Here we have a diagram of the three main basic needs for any audio system: the console or the soundboard. We also have the power amps, and then the speakers. There are a lot more peripheral add-ons that can be added into this system, such as reverb or compression, delay, and gate, but for time's sake, we won't get into those areas. The console is where instruments, microphones, and any other inputs are plugged in, and the majority of the time, a snake is used to reach from one end of the room to another so that the instruments can be on stage and the sound tech can mix from the back of the room. From there, we connect the console to the power amps. Without the power amps, the speakers won't be able to output any of the sound that's received from the console. This is also where we would connect any equalizers or other peripherals that we would need for the main output. Finally, we connect the power amps to the speakers, and there we have a basic audio system. Now let's dig into the sound console and see the basics of audio mixing. There are two types of sound consoles that churches use: analog and digital. I always teach with an analog console first because once you get a grasp of the basics, you can then tackle on any digital mixer. Here we have what is called a channel strip. Each column like this on a console is called a channel. So let's start from the top and work our way down. First, we'll be talking about the gain knob or trim knob. It controls the volume being input into the channel from the instrument or the microphone. It's important that we set what is called a gain structure right from the beginning. That basically means that we want each instrument or microphone to have enough volume into the sound console so that when we move our faders, we only have to do minor adjustments. To do this, it's best practice to set all of our faders, including the master volume fader, to 0. Then we can set the gain so that we get a good input volume. This will come in handy once we start mixing instruments and microphones, because then we can visually see how we want each instrument to sound volume-wise in the mix. For example, we'll want the vocals to really shine through so the congregation can hear the words with clarity. So when we mix, we will turn the vocal faders up more than the rest of the instruments. Now we're going to take a look at the auxiliary or monitor knobs. The console you see here has 4 auxiliaries. An auxiliary sends audio out of the board so that it can be used for things such as recording the service or as monitors for the individuals on stage, as well as other applications. Each knob controls individual mixes and then determines how much volume from that instrument goes into each auxiliary. So say we're working with the acoustic guitar channel and auxiliary 1 is going to the monitor on stage. If the guitarist wants more volume in their monitor, then we would find the acoustic guitar channel, which is what we've been working with, then find auxiliary 1 and turn the knob to the right. If we wanted to turn down the guitar in auxiliary 1, we would turn the knob to the left. The pre button that you see here sends the signal out of the mixer before it passes through the channel fader. That way you can turn the fader up or down, but it won't affect how much volume is sent through the auxiliary. When the button is set to post, the auxiliary volume for that channel is affected by moving the fader up or down. One example of using this feature is having the auxiliary assigned to a nursery speaker. If our channel controls the pastor's microphone and the button is set to post, when the sound tech moves the fader up or down, it will affect how much volume is sent to the nursery. Next, we're moving on to EQ. EQ is what allows us to clear up the sound of the instruments by controlling what frequencies are more pronounced or cut. The frequency and Q of the highs and lows are set on this mixer. The highs are set to 12,000 Hz and the lows are set to 80 Hz. You'll notice that the mids we are able to control what frequency is being boosted or cut. We'll talk more about the Q of the frequencies later, but for now let's see how to properly EQ each input that comes into the sound console. While the fine-tuning of EQ for each instrument or microphone is relative to what the sound tech believes sounds the best, there is a baseline we can work from. This is a chart I use to start from. You can see the acoustic guitar uses these frequencies more for clarity, and the kick drum uses these frequencies for more punch. So since the frequencies 82 to 104 Hz add more punch to the kick drum, we'll want to find the EQ knob closest to that number, which is the lows. We'll want to keep it at 0 or maybe even slightly boost it just to make it more pronounced. I've been able to work with many talented sound techs throughout the years, such as John Mills, who worked with the Passion Conferences and also was the head of sound for the Chris Tomlin Band and other musicians. One important takeaway from working with him was the fact that the EQ is like a sculpture. It's always better to cut than to add. So when EQing a channel, we want to make sure that we cut more than we add, because it will bring clarity to our mix. The last feature with EQ is the cutoff button found at the top by the gain or trim knob. We see here that the button cuts the frequencies from 75 Hz and below. This button is helpful in clearing up the sound because with instruments like the hi-hat or vocals, you won't need to use these frequencies from 75 Hz or below, so we can cut those out completely. On the other hand, we want to keep those frequencies in the channel for instruments such as the kick drum and the bass guitar. When the system is set up to have stereo sound, we can use this knob called the pan knob to make the instrument pan to one side of the speakers or the other. This is helpful, for example, when we have multiple electric guitars. If we have two guitarists, we can pan one guitar to the left and the other to the right so that they become clearer in the mix and aren't overlapping as much. The mute button is probably the most commonly used button on the board. When pressed, it mutes the channel from sending any volume to the main speakers. We return now to our faders, which we have discussed turns the volume up or down in the main speakers. Remember that when we start our gain structure, we want to set the fader to 0 so that we can then fine-tune the volume. These buttons to the right let you assign the channel to a group. The advantage to assigning the channel to a group would be to raise the volume of certain channels during certain parts of the music. For example, you can assign all of your vocals to group 1, and when you want your vocals to really shine through, raise the group fader found on the right side of the sound console near the main volume fader. Finally, you'll want to press in this button to assign each channel to the main left-right group so that the channel is assigned to the main volume fader. Now we are going to look at the advantages of digital consoles. I've worked with many digital consoles such as the Yamaha LS9 and also the Yamaha M7CL. In the link provided in the description, you'll find an article I wrote for the AV website BehindTheMixer.com where I discuss how to set up an iPad so that you can remotely control the sound of a digital console. The basics of mixing sound still apply to digital consoles, but they give you extra features that aren't easily available for analog consoles. Some examples of these features are the ability to clear up cable clutter of a snake by using a Cat5 cable as the snake, better control of EQ by controlling the frequency and Q of each frequency option, saving the settings of the soundboard for different events so that your morning service can have its own setting, the youth service can have its own setting, and you can also have settings for special events such as funerals or marriages. You can also have the ability to add reverb, delay, compression, gate, and more to each individual channel. I'm also able to set up different recording devices. Here we have a Tascam recorder that plugs straight into the computer. I've used this device many times for recording bands and church services where I wanted to mix each instrument. However, some instances don't call for 16 channels. Some churches may only want to record the pastor during the sermon. I use the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 to do just that. It's got just a couple of inputs, which is all that's needed for recording 1 or 2 channels during the service. Along with connecting the recording devices to the computer, you'll need software on the computer to record the audio. For smaller instances, I've used a free program called Audacity, which is able to do basic recording with good clarity. For bigger needs, such as recording a band or a worship band in a church service, I use Apple's Logic, which has many features and is able to work with other audio programs such as Reason or Ableton. Reason is a program that I use to play digital instruments. For example, during some services, I will connect my keyboard to a computer and use Reason to play the keyboard. There are many options to sounds that are available depending on what you want. Virtually any instrument is available in this software, so you can turn a keyboard or other MIDI device into an instrument. For an example on how to set up a keyboard in Reason, I have included a link in the description of a video made to show you a step-by-step guide. I use Ableton Live to run clicks and loops during a live worship setting. A click is what keeps the band in time with each other, and a loop is played by the computer to add more sounds that may not be able to be played by the musicians on stage. I use multi-tracks at the church I'm currently at because sometimes I may not have a band to play with me. Multitracks gives me control of each instrument from the song so that you can mute or change each instrument needed. As an example, if I have a bass player and keyboard player with me, I can mute those instruments in the multitrack and still have the other instruments play along by using the computer. I provided a video in the description I made to show how I set up clicks and loops in Ableton for a worship set. Also, I provided a video made by Multitracks to show you exactly how to use their product. Another area I'm fluent in is ProPresenter, Easy Worship, or MediaShout. Each of these programs displays the words on the screen so the congregation can sing with each song, and also can display video and scripture and photos. Each program has its strengths and its weaknesses, but the best software I've used is ProPresenter. Here we have a list of songs that you can choose from in a database. You can select the songs you want to put in the service and put them in here for quick access. You can also add videos, photos, scripture, and other elements of the service here in the order that they happen. Once you click on a song, it will appear here and you can roll through the different slides. You can also choose the background to be shown behind the words here. There are many other features that are very useful for any church, but for time's sake we can discuss those later. My wife is much better at ProPresenter than I am and has taught others how to use the program as well. I also have other technical skills such as video editing, which I have shown a little of here, and I can also build very dynamic websites. I can use WordPress or Drupal to build template websites or build from scratch. This is a website a friend and I built for a nonprofit organization. Here you can see the login screen. This site is all about meeting needs and submitting needs that are in your community. And so we have a follower system set up. You can view all the needs from your followers in your news feed. Here's just a couple of other features of forms that can be pulled up. I'm very competent in PHP, HTML, and SQL databases. And that's just a quick overview of the AV technical skills I've learned over the years. If you have any more questions about anything that we've discussed, please leave a comment or send me an email from www.mattschull.com.